areas in Vermont where they have town hall meetings. And it's a remarkable sort of environment because you sit there and everybody takes the day off on town hall meeting day and you vote on the budget for your town. And if you decide what's in the budget, you can talk about it. And some people go on and on and on, and all towns have people who do that occasionally. And everybody accepts it, and then you vote, and you get what you need, and you discuss real issues, real time, and make decisions, which, now we're so far removed from that, but this is, closely approximates that sort of thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this project. I have an idea of what some of the impacts may be here. I may not have them 100% right, but I think I'm pretty close. One thing when I talk about this project, it's hard for people sometimes to understand is the scale of what we're undertaking here. So this project, if it comes to fruition, will be the single largest coal terminal in North America. And that's saying something. And that's not the biggest one in rural America. It's not the biggest one in urban America. It's the biggest one, period. So 48 million metric tons. If you have trouble with metric tons, you take metric tons, you multiply it by 1.1, and you're pretty darn close to what it is in short tons, which is what we use in the U.S. When we look at the trains we're seeing are somewhere around 1.5 miles long. We think there are going to be 10 coming in and 10 coming out. Going back to the mines, which is 26 to 30 miles of additional trains going through the corridor. Bellingham and Point South, until we get to probably Everett, we get both trains going both ways. It's a little iffy in terms of the traffic scheduling. Once you get south of there, because they could go over the mountains when they're empty, they're not going to come this way when they're full because they're grade issues. So what we think at this point is that means 5 to 8 minutes of delay every hour at every grade crossing out there. Burlington Northern is not violating the law if they block an at-grade crossing for 10 minutes. Over 10 minutes, they are eligible for fines, but I've seen it a couple times of late in Bellingham. It means nearly 27,000 additional locomotives coming through communities. It's really hard to kind of grasp what that means. 4 locomotives per train. So each time you get a train cycle, you get 8 locomotives coming through. But if you look at the diesel particulates, which are the things that we're most concerned about in terms of health, this level of locomotive traffic is equivalent to 2.6 to 2.8 million semis passing through an area in terms of diesel particulates, not greenhouse gases, and I'm not talking about fuel efficiency. We all know about the horn blast. Every place I go, and I'll say something like, and there's that guy at 3 o'clock in the morning. Everybody starts nodding their head that I don't know what the deal is. Angry, unhappy that he or she is awake at that hour and wants to let us know about it. So in terms of total frequency of trains, 32 trains a day, a train every 45 minutes, 24 hours a day.
Repeat that.
Yeah.
So we have about 12 trains now, 20 trains, then 32 train trips a day. You divide that by 24, comes out to be about a train every 45 minutes. That doesn't mean it's going to be 45 minutes. It means that on average it will be that way. They don't have somebody that sits there and goes, okay, 45 minutes, here's the next one. You may get them stacked, and you may not have some for a while. So the players there are not players that generally take our interest in consideration. So you have SSA Marine, 49% of which is owned by Goldman Sachs, Peabody Coal, and then Burlington Northern Santa Fe. Big companies stand to make a lot of money out of this deal. Whoops, I went too far. Okay, so in terms of the money, you know, there's a lot of talk about revenues, tax revenues, jobs, and things like that. But when you look at, and these are guesses based upon stated prices, and these are generally gross numbers here. SSA Marine, $540 million a year in increased revenues. Burlington Northern, $750 million a year in increased revenues. Peabody Coal, depending upon the coal prices, somewhere between 2.4 to $5.8 billion a year in increased revenues out of this project when it's running at full capacity and all cylinders are firing. I'm not expecting you to memorize this or read everything on here. I worked in Washington, D.C. for a number of years, and one of the things that I spent a lot of time doing is working in rural America on really complicated issues. And one of the things that I found was that you'd have conservationists over here that had a point of view, and you'd see farmers over here, and they were like yelling at each other. And I noticed after spending time with them and asking them questions and keep asking questions that they were really talking about the same things and they were upset about the same things, but they used a different nomenclature. And when farmers were saying, I'm not getting a fair price for my crops, and I'm not getting a percentage of the food dollar that I used to get, and the conservationists were saying, you are farming too much of your land, doing the fence sort of thing, and there's no wildlife habitat left anymore, they were saying the same thing. And it took a little while to kind of sit down and do that, but as a matter of going through this process and figuring out this really simple matrix here, and basically what we're trying to do is set the stage for conservation agreements and pushing conservation measures in the federal farm bill by explaining the complex relationships and how something over here could lead to high suicide rates in rural America and dirty water, immigration, sunspots, whatever thing we could tie in here. We tried to figure out a way of explaining it, and we sent it around, and people kind of bought it. And it led me to some conclusions. And it's a pretty simple conclusion. And the conclusion is when big money and corporations are involved, rural America gets screwed. And they may not always know it, and they may not always understand the mechanisms and all that, but it's pretty much a truism that's happening. And that's one of the things that when we come out to places like this and talk to people about it, that try and get them to understand what's happening here, that they do have power, that we can stop this project, and their mechanisms for doing it. So I'm not going to go into in depth on the health impacts here. There are significant risks out here. We have a doctor in the house who will talk about that and hit every one of those points here.